She was driven by forces beyond her control. That is not the definition of powerful.
We have relationships with people all over the world that do dastardly things, right? That's actually foreign policy, isn't it?
You guys are spending too much fucking taxpayer money on nothing.
China is calling on Canada to release the chief financial officer of Huawei, the world's largest telecommunications manufacturer. Meng Wanzhou, who's also the founder's daughter, was arrested in Vancouver on Saturday. Canada's Justice Department says the U.S. wanted her arrested and extradited over accusations that Huawei violated its sanctions on Iran. The first bilateral peace talks since 2016 aimed at ending Yemen's civil war opened with an agreement to a prisoner swap that will free at least 5,000 people. Representatives of Yemen's government and Houthi rebels are meeting in Sweden. The next goal is getting the two sides to agree to reopen the airport in Yemen's capital and to allow the UN to run the main port in Hodeidah. Cubans no longer have to trek to a public hotspot to go online on their phones. The country's state-run telephone company has opened a 3G mobile network, but not every Cuban can afford to access it. 600 megabytes of data costs $7 a month, almost a quarter of the average monthly salary. As part of a crackdown on money laundering, Britain is suspending its so-called Golden Visa, which encourages rich foreigners to pour £2 million into the country to fast-track their way to residency.
Angela Merkel's 13 years as German Chancellor have transformed her country into an economic and diplomatic force.
Und stellen wir unter Beweis, dass wir unser Land gemeinsam nach vorn bringen. Mit Mut und Menschlichkeit. Denn Deutschland kann mehr und ich bin überzeugt, Deutschland kann es schaffen. Herzlichen Dank.
Tomorrow, she steps down after 18 years leading the Christian Democratic Union, Germany's biggest party. And while she plans to remain Chancellor until 2021, it's the beginning of the end of a ruler whose politics have shaped history.
Wir mit den Bildern des zerbombten Aleppo in Syrien vor Augen noch einmal sagen dürfen, wie wichtig und richtig es war, dass unser Land auch im zurückliegenden Jahr denjenigen, die tatsächlich unseren Schutz brauchen, geholfen hat, hier bei uns Tritt zu fassen und sich zu integrieren.
That decision to allow in 1.4 million refugees has stoked populism across Europe, divided her country and defined her reign.
Und wir sind auf dem, also es gibt tausende Menschen, die schlafen auf den Bergen in Kroatien. Wir haben auf den Bergen geschlafen und die Polizei hat uns auf jeden Fall geschlagen. Und als ich das gehört, dass sie die Grenzen wieder geöffnet hat, dass die Flüchtlinge wieder da rein können, ich freue mich, es hat mich sehr gefreut.
Anas Mudamani fled Damascus for Turkey, nearly drowned crossing the Mediterranean for Greece, and walked thousands of miles to reach Germany in 2015 on word of Merkel's policy. His image went viral thanks to this selfie, taken in a refugee camp, smiling next to the Chancellor.
Why did you feel the need to take that picture?
Also ich war ganz neu in Deutschland und ich bin noch am Anfang 18 Jahre alt. Ich war noch wie ein Kind und meine Mutter wollte immer wissen, was ich mache. Und als ich sie gesehen habe, ich habe mir schon nachgedacht, das wird ein bisschen, also eine schöne Geschichte vor meiner Mutter zu erzählen, dass ich mit die Bundeskanzlerin getroffen habe.
A family took him in, and Anas learned German, like 60% of the refugees who came in 2015. Now, he's studying to be a fitness trainer. But the selfie also brought Anas face-to-face with another side of Germany. Far-right groups posted it online, accusing Merkel of posing with a terrorist.
What are you getting?
Die Händchen mit den Pommes.
What's it been like here over the past 3 years?
Also die letzten 3 Jahre, sie waren sehr hart für mich. Ich muss zuerst die Sprache lernen, ich muss sehr oft zur Schule gehen und ich habe sehr hart gearbeitet, damit ich eine Wohnung finden kann. Aber jetzt geht mir viel besser als früher. Ich will hier studieren, ich will arbeiten, ich will dass ich wie ein ganz normaler Mensch hier lebe.
31 years after protests brought down the Berlin Wall, there's still a divide. Despite massive advancements since Merkel took office, unemployment, incomes and pensions are all still worse in the East than in the West.
Das war die letzte historische Veranstaltung.
Residents like Winfried Wenzel once again feel overlooked.
Die Menschen im Osten sind sehr enttäuscht von der Frau Merkel, weil sie ignoriert das Volk. In der Flüchtlingspolitik hat sie ihren eigenen Stil durchgezogen. Dieser Kernsatz, wir schaffen das. Wie sie sich anmaßen kann, das Wort wir zu benutzen, als Einzelperson. Das sagen viele Ostdeutsche, dass wir noch nicht zu 100% in Deutschland integriert sind. Und jetzt kommen die Neuen hinzu. Und das ist auch das Problem der Ostdeutschen.
Do you think you'll always feel like the West is more fortunate? Or do you think there are actually practical ways in which there is a difference between the two places?
Ich will mal ein Beispiel bringen jetzt beim Herangehen. Jedes Jahr bekommt der Rentner einen Bescheid über die Erhöhung der Rente. Bei dem ostdeutschen Rentner steht immer dahinter die Klammerbezeichnung Ost. Ich bin aber Deutscher, in Klammern Ost. Unsichtbare Mauer. Früher war es mal eine Mauer aus Stein, Beton, die durchs Land ging. Aber heute geht schon wieder so ein Riss durchs Land.
Winfried marched against communist rule in the 1980s, went on to vote for Merkel's party in the 1990s, and now takes to the streets every week to demand her removal. Far-right movements have, on average, double the support in the East.
There are people over there calling this demonstration racist.
Diese Worte Rassismus werden uns untergeschoben, um uns zu diskreditieren. Die Menschen haben die Nase voll von der Politik der Frau Merkel. Wir haben das Gefühl, dass wir wieder nur bevormundet werden und nicht unsere Stimme gehört, und unsere Stimme wird kein Gehör geschenkt.
Resentment at home and tensions within the CDU over how to deal with immigration turned voters away. Younger, left-leaning Germans are finding a home in the Green Party. The CDU now polls at about half of what it did when Merkel came to power, and her coalition partners, the Social Democratic Party, are at historic lows. But as Merkel lost power at home, she's managed to maintain her role as the European Union's power broker.
Why is there a different perception of Angela Merkel among the international community? They see her as being strong, stable.
Once you start creating a hype about this most powerful woman of the world, us, the professionals here, it was incomprehensible. She was not very comfortable. She was driven by forces beyond her control. That is not the definition of powerful.
During her time as Chancellor, she's had to weather the financial crisis and the refugee crisis. And still, comparing Germany to other countries in Europe, Germany has come out on top.
Yes.
Isn't that the sign of success?
To bring down your own party, on which you rely as a basis of your power, from 40 to 25, if that is success, how do we define failure then?
Merkel muss weg! Merkel muss weg!
Around the corner from where he took his selfie with Angela Merkel, Anas now finds himself side by side with her most vocal opponents.
Also ich bin eigentlich überrascht, also ich habe nicht erwartet, früher war so nicht, aber heute ist genau im Gegenteil, also die hassen uns, also mir fehlt die Worte, also ich bin sprachlos eigentlich. Es ist sehr schlimm, finde ich auf jeden Fall.
A report published today estimates that America's greenhouse gas emissions rose this year by 2.5%, the first increase since 2014. And, with darkly comic timing, the EPA announced that it's tearing up yet another environmental rule put in place by the Obama administration. No surprises here, it's about coal.
Shortly after President Trump took office, He directed federal agencies to repeal and replace regulatory burdens that were stifling energy innovation and production. We are gathered here to announce our proposal to revise the previous administration's determination of the best system of emission reductions for new power plants.
In 2015, the EPA began regulating the amount of carbon dioxide a new power plant can emit.
The EPA is setting the first ever nationwide standards to end the limitless dumping of carbon pollution from power plants.
The agency mandated that new coal plants include expensive, advanced carbon capture and air cleaning technology. By design, it didn't exactly incentivize anyone to build new plants. In fact, energy companies were already decommissioning existing ones. Since 2010, at least 270 coal plants have retired or are facing closure, and no new plants have come online since 2014. American coal consumption is now at its lowest level in 39 years. Strict carbon limits might have been at least one factor. So we asked a market analyst whether the Trump administration's new standards will get investors excited.
We do not think the weakening of this rule in the current environment will lead to more coal plants popping up in the U.S. Coal has become more expensive relative to other types of generation, whether that be natural gas or renewables, as that has reached more commercially viable scale.
If you feel like you've heard this before, it's because you have. Every time the Trump administration rolls back an environmental rule. Coal's dying because it's expensive. But the switch to renewables that's helping kill it off still hasn't stopped emissions from trending up.
Prepare to be shocked. For all of our high-flying values, American foreign policy doesn't operate based on human rights. Our leaders like to say that it does, but really even the most basic perusal of US history will show you it's just not true.
It is my honor and pleasure.
Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte orders the killing of thousands of his own citizens. But President Trump lauds the two countries' great relationship. Egypt's President Sisi clamps down on dissidents, and we send him $200 million in military aid anyway. And through the years of alleged human rights violations and the war in Yemen by Saudi-backed forces, most politicians said some stuff, but did basically nothing. Then the Saudi regime killed journalist Jamal Khashoggi, an act that was impossible to ignore. The murder itself was secretly recorded by the Turks, and there were reportedly piles of evidence suggesting the top level of the Saudi regime authorized it. So this time, senators are saying it's going to be different. The US is going to put human rights first, even if the president is dragging his feet.
Certainly we have to stand by our values, and when you have such strong evidence that the Crown Prince was involved, to not move forward and to hold him accountable would be wrong.
The Senate's number 2 Democrat, Dick Durbin, wants the US to expel the Saudi ambassador.
We ought to formally expel the Saudi ambassador from the United States.
Bob Corker, who will be a Republican senator from Tennessee for about a month more before he retires, says he talked to the Saudi ambassador shortly after the Khashoggi murder, and the ambassador told him there was no Saudi involvement. Corker called bullshit.
I have zero respect for him.
Giving a lift to this effort is the fact that it's bringing in the anti-war types too, because of that Saudi war in Yemen. Bernie Sanders has been calling for the US to do something about the situation in Yemen for a while now. He's got a bill with Utah Republican Mike Lee that would end all American support for the Saudi-backed offensive. The bill's picking up steam in the Senate these days, with a lopsided procedural vote in its favor just last week.
After we get US involvement out of it, we've got to do everything we can to end the war in Yemen. Bottom line is, and I think more and more Americans and members of Congress saw this with the murder of Khashoggi, is that we have a brutal, despotic regime in Saudi Arabia. And for many decades, under Democratic and Republican presidents, people say, oh, you guys are great, giving us oil. What more do we need in life? Well, that has got to be fundamentally rethought. I think we're in the beginning of doing that.
So, a lot of grumbling about Saudi Arabia in the Senate this week. Senators are not happy. But that thing about how we don't cut countries off over human rights, still there too. Senators want to keep a relationship with Saudi Arabia while also showing Saudi Arabia that they're mad. Corker told me That's just how things work.
We have relationships with people all over the world that do dastardly things, right?
Then
And we
wrong?
denounce the dastardly things they do, and we work with them when we have interests that align.
But then
It's just not that complex. That's actually foreign policy, isn't it? It's what we do every day.
It's important to note that there are 2 more weeks left in this lame duck Senate calendar. And the lame duck Republican-controlled House, which is generally pretty Trumpy, has shown no interest in doing anything at all on any of this Saudi stuff. In the unlikely event that a bill calling out Saudi Arabia with actual teeth made it through both houses of Congress, Trump could just veto it. So even as the Senate backbone might be starting to show, it should not surprise you if things revert to the mean, where countries the US is allied with can, in this case, literally get away with murder.
Members of the Los Angeles City Council voted yesterday to advance a plan that would fast-track 5 new emergency homeless shelters around the city. The shelters are part of Mayor Eric Garcetti's campaign to attack rampant homelessness in LA, but they're only intended to be a stopgap. The larger strategy, approved by taxpayers, is to provide more services and ultimately permanent housing to the thousands of Angelenos who live on the streets.
Do you have an order of things that you move out? I mean, or
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I have to put it in order. It has to go in an order way because that's the way I put it back in. It's my brain. I've been doing this for too damn long that I've gotten used to doing it in a orderly fashion so that I know what goes where. If I move something off, oh, that shit drives me crazy.
Harvey Franco's house burned down 13 years ago. He's lived on the streets of LA ever since. One of his many problems is Tuesday mornings, when sanitation workers come through and Harvey has to pack up. Harvey, who's become the de facto mayor of this block, doesn't like the disruption, but it's become part of his weekly routine. Move out, crews clean up, then move right back in.
we usually think of people as being kind of transient, but you seem to know your neighborhood pretty well. Do people come pretty much and stay when they're here?
Yeah, we have to like warn them of the rules.
What are the rules?
Don't dirty it. Don't pee out in the street. Don't toss your pee in the street. Don't shit in the street. I don't want to see none of that shit because we're not doing it. We want to keep not just this area, but everything around this area because everybody's spread out. Believe it or not, what you're seeing here is not everybody.
LA's homelessness problem is notorious. In 2017, the homeless population had climbed to more than 55,000 people. Voters approved Measure H to give the city another tool beyond street sweeps. The measure added a new sales tax to fund services for the homeless, and a second measure, Triple H, created a $1.2 billion city bond to build new housing. It's the most money voters anywhere in the country have pledged toward ending homelessness.
Hello?
This is what that money is buying. 96 new outreach workers who patrol their service area, with police officers keeping watch in the background, to connect with homeless residents and try to help them navigate their way into housing, completing paperwork, giving rides, and sometimes just listening. Amy Perkins supervises them. She acknowledges things aren't happening as fast as she'd like.
A lot of people who may at first glance appear beyond reach just take time. When we first started coming on a regular basis, some of the people who wouldn't speak to us, wouldn't get out of their tent, would just yell, "I'm doing things, get away," who now are accepting rides from us, who are, sharing information with us, asking for us to reach out to their case manager for them, just being forthcoming about what's going on with them.
What we're hearing a lot of is people who are experiencing homelessness saying, I just want permanent housing now. I don't want to deal with all the other crowd. Just give me an apartment and a key and let me go in.
Yes.
What's the problem with that?
The number one problem is housing inventory, for sure. We've got to start building more, and then we've got to just incentivize these landlords to open up their units and take a chance, or what they view as a chance.
Measure H funding has brought in nearly $82 million, It's allowed nearly 19,000 people to move into temporary shelter, and more than 9,600 people have moved into permanent housing since July of last year. Experts say this is a step in the right direction, but not everyone on the street has faith in the help that's being offered.
You know what? I don't give a shit what it is. You guys are spending too much fucking taxpayer money on nothing. Nothing. There's nothing here. There's no fucking housing.
You give me one more chance, okay? Tomorrow morning at 6?
I'll think about it.
Okay, so I'm
I'll
coming
think about
at 6, and then we see.
Come back at 6 tomorrow if you like.
Any paperwork you have, I'd like to see.
That was it.
What was your interaction with Harvey like?
I think he's very much a part of the community here. He has a lot of support here. People know him, and I want to prove to him, because his trust has been broken countless times. So I'm going to prove to him that you can trust.
Do you ever feel that hopelessness?
Sure. But when I come and do outreach and just talk to a person who's experiencing homelessness and sort of connect with them, I feel less hopeless.
Hey! Boom, boom, boom. That's some shit you fall off a table to.
Let's get lost inside the clouds. You gotta work harder. I can calm you down.
Malcolm. I never heard this version. It's so stripped down and beautiful. He's like got the voice like one of your buddies, you know? Like kind of sings, you know, just like the homie. So like pulls at the heart. I miss my homie. Everybody that he was around, he's just like a magnet, and he helped so many people out, including myself. Thank you, Malcolm.
Wish I could say thank you to Malcolm, 'cause he was an angel. Yeah, for that I say thank you. Next, thank you. Next.
Yeah, Ariana, the chord progression has been done. It's like a familiar chord progression, R&B, kind of pop progression. You know, it's a little safe for me, but you know, I think it could be a mood, you know. If I'm making cookies or something, I would probably play that.
Ain't gonna moan no more, man, around this place.
Little 12-bar blues, jazz vibes. It's cool, you know? It's like when you're having a good time and your uncle comes in. Y'all don't know nothing about no good. Let me put... God damn it. You gotta like, yeah, thanks. It's great. It's not bad.
It's Van Morrison.
It's Van Morrison?
Yeah.
Well, damn, God bless his heart. It just immediately started to smell like cigarettes in here, though. Yeah, well, right when it came on.
Fuck that nigga, I'm the motherfucking shit. Another old nigga on a young nigga dick. Niggas try to say that I was canceled. When I asked the question, couldn't answer. How yeah, how sway?
Damn, that beat was fire. The bass was going crazy in this. That kid didn't give a fuck, man. The dude was just entertaining and funny, but ain't nothing funny about prison. I like when rappers, when they're featuring, they go back and forth, splitting a verse. You finish the line, I'll finish the line, go back and forth. They definitely did say Kanye was canceled. Attack of the Trolls.
We were a few days away from the ATMs not working.
Suddenly, folks are getting wiped out.
I asked her, we headed for a Great Depression, and Bernanke said, you know, it looks that way.
I'd look into the abyss, and I would see food lines, millions of people unemployed.
Hank had just thrown up into a wastebasket.
I don't know if it was a panic attack, but the markets were so fragile, we were never going to let it get known. John called a press conference and said, I'm demanding the president have a meeting. It was high-stakes drama.
The meeting sort of descended into a little bit of chaos.
Barney Frank started shouting, "Where's your plan, McCain?"
At that point, it was dire. Congress can't get it together.
There was fear, and we did it without a playbook. The fact that the American public hates what we did is not surprising, because in many ways it's un-American.